No one visited that forgotten corner of the world anymore. Only the crickets knew about old Thomas, the farmer with cracked hands and a tired gaze, who each morning walked out to the field with a hoe and a prayer. At 82 years old, life had struck him hard. He had lost his wife, his children, his neighbors. All he had left was that dry land, cracked like his heart, and a small hut where a dusty wooden crucifix hung on the wall. Thomas never complained. Each dawn, as the sun rose, he lifted his arms to the sky and said in a firm voice, "Lord, I don't ask for riches or youth, only that you don't abandon me." That year, the drought was brutal. The well dried up, the seeds didn't sprout, and the wind, once cool and gentle, became a whisper of death that dragged dust and despair. Those who still saw him in town said he had gone mad. What's that old man planting? Faith? Broken dreams? They mocked. But Thomas, with a hunched back and an upright soul, dug the earth every day. No water, no harvest, only his faith. One afternoon, after another relentless day under the sun, he knelt in the middle of the field and cried out to the heavens, "Father, even if I don't see the rain, I will keep planting, because I believe in you more than in what my eyes can see." His tears fell on the dry ground, and that was the first miracle, because when no one expected it, the sky began to change. Night fell over the field like a heavy blanket. Thomas returned to his hut with dirty hands, weary feet, but a heart on fire. He lit a candle, as he did every night, in front of the wooden crucifix hanging on the wall. Shadows danced across the room as he whispered his prayers with closed eyes. "Lord, if you are to take me soon, do it when the wheat blooms. I want to see, just once more, that the earth can give life, that my faith was not in vain." And then, something different happened. That night, as he slept on his straw mattress, a gentle breeze slipped through the crack in the door. It wasn't cold or dry, but warm, like a mother's caress. Thomas dreamed of his wife, dressed in white, walking through a golden field. Beside her, their children laughed among tall, glowing stalks of wheat. They all smiled at him. "Don't stop believing," she said tenderly. "Heaven never forgets those who sow with tears." Thomas woke up drenched in sweat. Outside, it was still before dawn, but for the first time in months, the air smelled different. It smelled like damp earth. He ran barefoot to the field, and there, in the darkness, he heard a soft murmur, like the whisper of God. Drops, slow, timid, rain. Thomas fell to his knees and laughed as he cried. He didn't scream. He didn't speak. He just lifted his eyes to the sky, like a child recognizing the embrace of his father. The rain fell throughout the night. It wasn't a storm, nor a roar. It was a constant, patient whisper, as if heaven wept alongside old Thomas. But this time with joy. The next morning, the field had changed. Where there had once been dust and cracks, now there was mud, puddles, and a new promise. The earth, thirsty for so long, seemed to breathe again. Thomas went out early. He knelt down, plunged his hands into the damp soil, and closed his eyes. Thank you, Lord," he whispered, his voice breaking. That very afternoon, without waiting another moment, he sowed again. Grain by grain, furrow by furrow, with trembling hands but a steady heart, he planted what little he had left. He held nothing back. He didn't think about tomorrow. He placed all his hope in that wet soil and in the God who had heard his cry. Days went by. The rain didn't return, but the water that had fallen was enough. Thomas kept going to the field every day, not to watch over it, but to pray. "Bless every seed," he would say. "You are the one who gives the growth." Then one morning, as the sun barely peeked over the mountains, he saw it. A sprout, small, green, fragile, just one. But it was enough. Thomas fell to his knees and laughed like a child, because he didn't need to see the whole field in bloom. One sign was enough, a whisper from heaven. Weeks went by, and the impossible began to happen. The sprouts multiplied. Green, strong, defying logic, the weather, and the season. The land everyone had called dead was alive. But no one knew. Thomas's field grew in silence, far from the town. No one passed by. No one helped him. No one even asked if he was still alive. And yet, every day, that old man with a hunched back and a radiant soul walked among the furrows with a smile that seemed from another world. He didn't sing with his mouth, but his steps, his sighs, his way of looking at each stalk were a hymn, a silent song to the God who had not forgotten him. One day, a young man from town, curious about the rumors, came near the field. When he saw the golden expanse, he was left speechless. "Who did this?" he whispered. Thomas, who had heard him from afar, approached with the help of his cane. "The one who gives life when there is nothing left," he replied gently. "I only sowed with faith." The young man moved, lowered his gaze. "I'm sorry, Don Thomas. We thought you were mad." The old man smiled. "Faith looks a lot like madness, son. Only faith blossoms." The field had bloomed like in the old days. Better yet, like never before. The wheat stalks were tall, golden, strong. Each grain was a tiny miracle. Thomas walked among them with tenderness, touching each one as if blessing a child. The young man who had visited him before began bringing others. At first, they came in silence with reverence. Some wept upon seeing what Thomas had achieved with nothing but faith. And he, always humble, would say, "It wasn't me. I just waited on the one who never fails." But as the field grew, Thomas faded. His body no longer responded the same. The cane had become his second leg. His cough, more persistent. His steps, slower. But his eyes shone as they did on the very first day. One afternoon, the young man found him sitting in the middle of the field, watching the wheat sway in the wind. His hat rested on his chest, his face bathed in sunlight. "Are you all right, Don Thomas?" The old man nodded with a faint smile. "I'm better than ever, son, because I've seen it, the miracle, the faithfulness of God." He took the young man's hand with surprising strength. "Promise me something," he said, "that when I'm no longer here, you'll keep sowing faith, even when the land is dry, even when the heavens go silent, because God always listens, even if he takes time to answer." The young man nodded, tears in his eyes. That day, he realized he was witnessing more than just a harvest. He was seeing a life that had fully blossomed. Night fell gently over the field. It was a night without wind, without crickets, without clouds. Only the distant whisper of the wheat swaying, as if the field itself were breathing. Thomas did not return to his hut. The young man, worried, searched for him with a lit lantern. He found him right there, where they had said goodbye hours before, sitting among the stalks, with a peaceful smile, his eyes closed, his face at rest. His cane had fallen to the side. His hands were folded over his chest. The old sower had departed, but not alone. He left surrounded by life, by miracle, by a promise fulfilled. There was no grand funeral. No bells rang. Only the whisper of the wheat and the tearful eyes of the young man who dug, with his own hands, a simple grave at the edge of the field. Upon a wooden cross, he wrote in firm letters, "Here rests Thomas, the one who sowed faith where there was only dust." The whole town came to the field in the days that followed. Many remained silent. Some wept, and others, inspired, began to work their own land with newfound hope. Because now they knew something they had long forgotten. Faith needs no witnesses, but it always bears fruit. Months went by. Thomas's field was harvested by young hands and grateful hearts. But something more bloomed alongside the wheat. The young man, to whom Thomas had entrusted his final wish, was never the same again. With the old man's cane in one hand and the Bible in the other, he walked through the village, telling the story of the man who believed when no one else did. The land wasn't cursed, he would say to anyone willing to listen. It was just waiting for someone to believe with all their heart. And so other hands were moved to sow. Widows, farmers, disheartened youths, all began to plow abandoned lands, not just because of what Thomas had achieved, but because he had shown that the heart can learn to trust again, even if it's been broken 1,000 times. Thomas's field became a place of gathering, of prayer, of gratitude. Many arrived hopeless and left renewed, because they felt that place wasn't just soil. It was testimony. It was an altar. It was the living legacy of someone who never gave up. At the entrance, the young man had a simple wooden sign carved. Here faith bloomed, and it keeps growing still. Thomas's field became a school of life, of faith, of miracles. It didn't teach letters. It taught how to trust, to sow when there is nothing, to wait when everything hurts, to believe when it seems absurd. Children ran between the furrows. Women prayed in circles at dawn. Rough men knelt on the ground, giving thanks for what they once despised. And in every harvest, in every new sprout, in every life transformed, was the invisible mark of Thomas. One afternoon, the young man, now grown with silver at his temples, walked to the place where the old sower rested. He held a single ear of wheat in his hand. He knelt, gently placed it upon the wooden cross, and whispered, "I kept the promise, old friend." He lifted his gaze to the sky, and at that moment, a warm breeze swept across the field, making the wheat sway like waves of gold. It wasn't just the wind. It was heaven smiling, because in a forgotten corner of the world, a man sowed faith into dry soil, and God made it bloom forever.